Hello everyone. I'm Sarah Murphy, the Chair of Sustainable Wales. Welcome to our fourth and final A Design for Life webinar this October on the circular economy. If you missed the previous three, then no worries. They are now all on the Sustainable Wales YouTube channel, and I'll be popping the one for tonight up tomorrow as well. As a quick recap, over the last few weeks, we have explored why we need a circular economy in Wales, how we can move towards living a zero waste lifestyle now, and how a circular economy can create jobs by closing the loops. And I think what we have found is that there are many reasons why we must prioritise moving towards a circular economy in Wales and also becoming a zero waste nation. It's not just about reducing our impact on the planet, but it's also about addressing food injustice, social injustice, creating sustainable jobs and a more resilient and collective society and economy in Wales. And that is why Sustainable Wales, we are doing these webinars, because we believe in local solutions for global problems. Our charity has campaigned for over 25 years for sustainable development and ethical consumerism. And we are very excited about the imminent Welsh Government circular economy strategy and Wales becoming a zero waste nation by 2050. So tonight, we wanted to create an open space where we can come together from across Wales and build on raising awareness of the different aspects of the circular economy, ask questions and share thoughts and experiences. We have people here tonight who have been working on the circular economy for decades, and those who may not have heard of the circular economy but are passionate about helping our planet, our communities, and the sustainable development goals just like us. So as always, there are no daft questions tonight, and comments and sharing your experiences and thoughts are very welcome. We're calling these lightning webinars as they will be no longer than 1 hour, 15 minutes tops, we promise. And by now, between all of us, we've probably been on thousands of Zoom calls, so we know the drill. If you can all mute and then post any comments or questions in the chat box as we go along, and then I'll bring you in as soon as I can. We'll have two speakers, followed by questions and comments, and then our final two speakers, followed by a discussion. So let's get started. Tonight's question is, do we need a Circular Economy Act for Wales? And I'm very excited to see what direction this takes us in. Our first speaker is David Warren. David is the head of the Circular Economy Policy Development at the Welsh Government. He is leading on the development of a new circular economy strategy for Wales. Over recent months, he has been working on COVID-19 response activity and work on the green recovery. Previously, David worked in economic policy, taking forward work to prepare the Welsh Government's Economic Action Plan and evolving business rates to Wales. Other roles have included working in local government, for a regulator, and in several key policy roles within Welsh Government. We're really thrilled that you're here tonight. Thank you, David. And I'm just going to hand over to you now so that you can share your screen and your presentation with us once I find you. Sorry about this. Let me just... We've got too many Davids tonight, that's the problem. There we go, David. You're good to go.
The scariest bit for me is going to be getting this presentation up, hopefully.
It worked fine a minute ago. There we go, beautiful.
Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just, great. So my name is David Warren. After that very lengthy introduction, I probably won't do any more, only to say, on the daft questions point, please ask as many daft questions as you like. My daft question started 4 years ago on this journey when I asked, what on earth is the circular economy? So that's where I started from, and I think that's where many of us have started from. So please, anything that you want to ask, please do so. There's no such thing as a daft question. Okay, what I want to do is I just want to tell you a little bit for 10 minutes or so, tell you a little bit about what we've been doing as a Welsh Government, the journey we've been on as a nation, and where we're planning on going in the future. And really happy to have some of your thoughts and discussion on that. Okay. So Wales has an impressive track record of achievement. This is part of the reason that I wanted to come and join the team. There are people, some of my colleagues, my boss, Andy Rees, and others, who have been involved in this work for a long period of time. And over the course of 20 years of devolution, they've taken Wales on an incredible journey, particularly on when you look at recycling. Wales is now first in the UK, second in Europe, and third in the world when it comes to household recycling. Less than 10% of our municipal waste goes to landfill. Food waste collection from every household in Wales. The majority of councils signed up to our collections blueprint, the preferred way for collecting materials. Around about £1 billion invested in collections infrastructure and regimes. Really important investment and achievement there. But also much more than that, there's been a lot of benefits for communities themselves. We've seen support to Fair Share Cymru, seen over 8 million meals now redistributed to people in need, food that would have otherwise gone to waste being redirected. The vast majority of schools in Wales are signed up to the Eco Schools programme. There are 2 circular economy funds, one target a business supporting them to use more recycled materials in manufacturing, and another aimed at public bodies to work in partnership with others to make that transition towards circular economy. Lots of environmental projects supported, and as a result, we've seen emissions reduce. But it's more than just the government taking us on this journey. Actually, government has done our bit. We've provided the funding, we've set the statutory targets, we've set the policy direction. Local authorities have done a huge part of the delivery, as have other stakeholders as well. But actually, it's been every household in Wales doing their bit, which has got us to this world-leading position on recycling. And as you can see there, we are very closely behind Taiwan and Germany in terms of being the world leaders when it comes to recycling. And ministers have got a commitment to taking that work forward. For me, that's a very strong foundation for us to take forward work on the circular economy. And it's something that really we should all be proud of. Often, if I do a presentation outside of Wales, I ask people, what are your stereotypes of Wales, or what are your images of Wales and castles and rugby and dragons and all that kind of thing. Well, I think recycling should be there as part of our 21st century culture, because it's something that we all do, and it's something that is become a second nature to us. So last year, at the very end of last year, we decided that towards zero waste, our current strategy was 10 years old, and actually it was time to start thinking about taking a slightly different approach. And I'll go into that in a little moment. But we had a very strong steer from ministers that actually they wanted an approach consultation that was accessible. And we produced a very short consultation document. I hope some of you have seen that, 24 pages long. It was to the point. It was short, not just for the sake of being short, but because we didn't want to produce a document which dictated to people what the forward agenda was going to be. We wanted to leave lots of space for ideas and opinions. We produced a lot of other resources available. We produced a lot of other resources too, things like presentations, which groups and communities could upload and use, which schools could use. We had an easy read version, a 1-page summary of the strategy. We tried to make it as accessible as possible, and we tried to cut the jargon where we could. We said that to us, the circular economy is simply keeping resources in use and avoiding waste, seeing that value in the resources that we have. So what we did is we went around Wales. Then we had 40 consultation events. They were within communities, they were with young people, they were with experts. We travelled the length and breadth of the country, and we went to where people were. So our community events were in the evenings. When we went to talk to young people, we went to colleges. Someone said David Blair's on the line, my colleague. We turned up at Pembrokeshire College in Haverfordwest and spoke to young people there, and some told us we're too lazy to recycle, or we're too busy to get involved in this agenda, whereas others told us they were absolute eco warriors, etc. And that was important for us, because we didn't just hear from committed diehards to this agenda. We heard from lots of different people. We had people turn up to the consultation event who said, I'm here because I care about my local area, or I want to know a bit more what my grandchildren's future is going to be like, etc. We had a really open and honest engagement, and around about 1,000 people came along to those events and submitted responses. What we said in that consultation document is that the Welsh Government has got 3 strategic objectives. They can't be changed. They're absolutely set in stone. And they are that we get to our net zero carbon ambitions, And we know that 45% of emissions come from the goods and products that we make and use. So we're never going to achieve a net zero carbon unless if we start to radically rethink our use of resources. We want to get to zero waste by 2050. We want to do that by using only our fair share of the Earth's resources. And we want to make that transition to a more circular economy where we keep resources in use and avoid waste in the first place. In the document, we had 6 core themes. They're things that I think you would expect to see, but things like driving innovation in materials use. So that's really about having a long-term plan for the resources we need in Wales and finding out how we can access those resources. So for example, could we grow more timber in Wales to support our needs? A big emphasis on prevention and reuse, clearly building on our recycling record. I'd already mentioned we'd invested £1 billion in infrastructure, so carrying on that investment, supporting communities and businesses who are doing fantastic work around Wales, and then using our government levers. And that means acknowledging that the Welsh Government has acquired lots more powers over the course of devolution, powers on tax and fiscal matters, legislation, etc. How do we pull those in alignment to make the biggest difference? I'm not going to go through all the actions there, but you can see the 8 headline actions that we put through, things like phasing out unnecessary single-use items, making more efficient use of our food, investing in clean technology, taking full responsibility for our waste, supporting communities to take action, etc., are all about encouraging that. And we ask people, are these the kind of actions that would get us towards achieving those kind of strategic objectives that are set out? I've already spoken that we kind of we talked in these various groups. We targeted some particular groups. I mentioned that we met communities. We started in a field in Gwalchmai, Anglesey, with an event in the evening, and we went to Chepstow and Mold and Haverfordwest and lots of other places where we had some really great events. We had a lot of detailed specific sessions with stakeholders and with experts as well. We had one engagement event in London too, where we brought together a lot of people. So we really wanted to listen to the ideas that people had. Then the pandemic came and we were forced to shift focus. The priority for us was making sure that waste and recycling collections were maintained, and then that household recycling centres then reopened. But more than that, we did things like we expanded our circular economy fund for business to support them to use more recycled material to produce PPE and other materials that we need. We provided additional funding to FareShare and to Repair Cafe Wales and to other organisations. We expanded our circular economy fund again to try and spark some and fund some of the community action that was going on, make that more sustainable going forward. So it wasn't just about collecting the bins. That was a big priority for us, but it was about trying to stimulate and support some of the interest in repair, remanufacture, new business models, etc. Then when the pandemic was on us, I think I made this little kind of, must have been in April or May, right at the kind of height of the first wave, where I looked at my own community, and I won't go into full detail on this, but here in Cardiff, what I started to see was businesses starting to adapt to survive and thrive. So Treganna Gin started making hand sanitizer. The Totally Welsh Dairy started offering more deliveries and more products for delivery. Businesses in the community started growing the sharing economy locally. And things like swapping books and toys, yes, but also swapping surplus items like building materials, food became commonplace. The community came together to take action, giving advice on where you could go for a walk, where there was rewilding and other activities going on, and where you could access food, etc. And public services found new ways to engage with this as well. Some of the key lessons that we learned were that resilience is key, that supply chains are complex and vulnerable, that although the pandemic is unprecedented, they're likely to be part of a new normal. We've seen the hottest May and the wettest February in Wales. People really came together, and public perceptions about resources have changed. I know I'm right on the limits. I will literally rush to the end. We are going to
a minute left.
Oh, good. Okay. We're talking more now about how we join up some of our initiatives across government, and you'll always hear government talk about join up, but I think there's a real potential here to start joining up on some key issues. It's more than a potential, it's an imperative. We have to do this now because of the impact of the pandemic, the impact on the economy, the potential impact of Brexit, and for our future resilience. So, for example, if we're talking about rejuvenating town centres, which the Welsh Government are talking a lot about, we're talking about linking up the active travel and integrated transport, releasing unused space for innovation, looking to emerging retail areas, things like zero waste refill shops, repair, combining town centre developments with housing, for example, just by footfall, retrofitting premises to be more efficient and more resilient, but investing on a no regrets basis. So not doing things now that we're going to have to fix in 5 or 10 years time. Look, I think we have got a unique opportunity to do things differently. I've hopefully taken you on a journey to convince you that the circular economy is much more than recycling. It's a plan for improving social, economic and environmental outcomes across Wales. We will publish a new strategy by the end of the year, fingers crossed. Thank you very much. That was a very quick run through. There's my contact details. Happy to chat, happy for you to contact me separately. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, David, that was absolutely brilliant, and you did it in 10 minutes. So well done.
Sorry.
No, that's absolutely perfect. You did absolutely perfect. Thank you so much. I was just going to say as well that I do think, considering you started this consultation at the beginning of the year, and we couldn't have predicted what's happened this year. And I know that you and many others in your department have been pulled away to help with the response to COVID. And I'm just really pleased that, I know you must be working your guts out at the moment to still kind of like keep to getting the strategy out by the end of the year. And that in itself, I'm really pleased about, and shows that, it is being prioritized. So that's wonderful. Thank you. If you have any questions for David, I'm going to bring our next speaker in, but pop them in the chat box. And then after the next speaker, we can have some questions from everybody. So don't be shy. Jude, I've just made you the host, so you should be able to share your screen. And I'm just going to give you an introduction. Is that okay, Jude? Is that working?
That's great. Yeah. Will I share the screen now?
Yeah, crack on. That's great. So I'm really pleased to introduce Jude. Jude was one of many who took the time to have a chat with me when I was putting together these webinars with our Sustainable Wales team. And Jude is an international expert and thought leader on eco-design, sustainable design and circular economy, and works as a designer, maker, project operations manager, evaluator, trainer, speaker, and consultant. Jude is director of the global design agency Anwar. I hope I'm saying that right.
Inish.
Oh, right,
Inish,
totally
yeah.
different. Not at all.
Yeah. It's Gaelic.
Inish.
It's Irish, Gaelic.
Sorry.
Okay.
Should have said that before, everybody. Which you set up with Dr. Frank O'Connor, who is here tonight as well, I believe, to create value through design for sustainability, working with business, intra-government, government, local authorities, educators, and civil society. Specialists in Helix collaboration, Anish, take a systems design perspective, specialising in ethical branding, sustainable products, responsible value chains, and circular business models at a product and urban design level. Jude has a particular interest in developing urban scale business models that repurpose by products into responsible indie product-based brands. And Jude also has a bachelor's degree in industrial design and a master's degree in environmental management. So I'm absolutely thrilled to hear your presentation tonight. I asked Jude specifically, obviously she can talk on so many things, but to give us a bit of like an international perspective this evening. Over to you, Jude.
Great. That's great. Thank you. Thank you. So good evening, everyone. I want to say thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I want to say thank you to Sarah and Sustainable Wales and Margaret for organising, and Tara as well for organising all the events. It's been an amazing 4 series of webinars. So it's been great to be on and to be able to listen to all of them. It's been great variety and they've been very inspiring. So thank you to everyone for joining us today and for listening into the talks today. So I'm Jude. I run a global design agency called Inish. So we specialize in design for sustainability, circularity, and responsibility. And between me and my partner, Dr. Frank O'Connor, we have over 50 years experience of working in this field. So we've worked both with businesses, helping them transition to circularity, but also we work a lot with policymakers, educators, and a lot on research as well. And over 25 years of that has been actually in Wales as well. So we're massively missing Wales at the moment. Even those pictures earlier on David had as Wales, we're feeling homesick. So we've known, I suppose overall we're here because we've known for a long time that we need to move away from our linear production model, the linear production model of take, make and dispose. We've known for a long time we can no longer afford to use precious resources, to waste them in the way we do, to use them up quicker than nature can replace them. And many of these are used these resources are only used for a very short period of time before being dumped in a landfill, or worse, from my perspective, is worse is when they're burnt. So we've been ignoring the risks associated with this linear model, and we've been putting our heads in the sand. And I'm sure Margaret can attest to this, that what it feels like to be banging your head against the wall often feels like banging your head against the wall, repeating the same warnings, repeating the same concerns that we have around the linear business models. So likewise, our co-founder Frank O'Connor has been working since the mid-90s in Wales, promoting, helping, and trying to get a circular economy and a sustainable economy in Wales through eco-design and through life cycle thinking. So these are just a number of different policy documents he helped fed into through the award-winning research centre he set up in Wales called the Eco-Design Centre. So he's over many years, he provided evidence and know-how to many different departments in the Welsh government to feed into these different policy documents at the time. So it's amazing now to see that Wales is progressing beyond recycling. It's amazing because we know the circular economy is not about waste. Yes, reusing and recycling waste is a part of circular philosophy, but it's better waste management is not a circular economy, or won't make a circular economy. So we know the circular economy needs to move beyond waste. It needs to move into a holistic and system perspective where resources and materials are used efficiently and effectively. So it's about how we resource our raw materials. It's about how we produce our products, how we design for sustainability, how we design for responsible value chains. And it's about how businesses take responsibility for their products post-production through the use of circular business models. So there are two ways of seeing the circular economy. And we can see the circular economy as a risk, or we can see it as an opportunity. Now, this is a quote from the European Commission. The circular economy is a transition, and it's meant to be a rather harsh transition, and at times disruptive transition. It's meant to leave companies doing things the old way simply to go out of business. Or else, as the way I like to see it, and we at Inish like to see it, it's a massive opportunity. It's an opportunity that's worth over 1.8 trillion euros. So these figures are from 2015, so they would have massively increased since then. So this is the financial opportunities are there. The business case and the global case for embracing circularity and sustainability has never been clearer. The business case has never been stronger. It makes regulatory sense, it makes financial sense, it makes resource sense, and it makes market sense. And citizens, I'm sure David is attest to this as well, citizens want change. They're demanding that businesses change, and they're demanding that their goods and services become circular and sustainable. And they want that to be as easy as possible for them. Since I've started in this field in 2002, looking at greenwashing and green marketing in my design degree, survey after survey shows us that consumers want sustainable products. And design is the key to unlocking that. So design is the key to unlocking the colossal opportunities that's laying there in the circular economy, and not just unlocking those opportunities for businesses so that businesses can maintain the resources and the value of those resources for longer and continuously gaining back that value back into their company. But design is also key because it makes our life easier. Good design, you don't notice good design because it makes our life easier. And design will make circular economy convenient, will make it easier. Design is key to getting all of us on board to want to reuse our reusable cups, to make that easy as possible, to want to recycle, to make that as easy as possible. So every national government that wants to will need to transition to a circular economy. And it's about how to make that transition as smooth as possible. So every national government needs to embrace system change to unlock that potential. And it needs to be ambitious, radical, and creative if it wishes to achieve a smooth transition to a circular economy. So the question is, how can policymakers make this transition as smooth as possible? So there's actually a lot of similarities between my slide here and David's as well. infrastructure, circular infrastructure, capacity building, incentives and regulations. So with policymakers, what we set out when we work a lot with the UN and training policymakers, and what we set out from the start is that they have to have an overarching policy. They have to have an overarching goal, and Wales has that. Wales has that in its Future Generations Act, and it has it in the overall goals that David addressed earlier. So which can be half the battle. Unfortunately, in Ireland, we've just released a waste action plan, and we're developing a circular economy strategy over the next year, which is a bit putting the cart before the horse. So it's you're kind of they've a waste action plan that they'll have to go back and reevaluate now based on how the circular economy strategy goes. So it's great to see that Wales are taking the right approach, putting the strategy first, putting those overarching goals first. So so change an economy has taken decades to get here. So we weren't always linear. So it's taken decades to get here, and it will take time again to transition back to a linear economy. So, or to transition, sorry, back to a circular economy. So the right foundations need to be in place. And this is for every country we're talking to. The right foundations need to be in place within the next 5 years to ensure that every economy can transition smoothly to a circular economy. So the question is then, is a Circular Economy Act essential for that transition? Now at Inish, we would try and stay away from very strong legislative implements if there's better ways of doing it, if there's softer approaches, if there's quicker approaches that can make those changes. And it's great to see that Wales are already on track with that, are already bringing those forward. So we believe there are many small initiatives further small initiatives that the Welsh Government can do to facilitate a smooth transition. And also, if an act is something that Wales wants to pursue, I suppose a lot of care, what we've seen a lot as well over recently in a lot of different countries is, especially around climate acts, is that unless there's binding targets and unless there's very strong actions contained within that act, then it just becomes words, and those words unfortunately can be manipulated. So across Europe, Europe is taking its journey into a Green Deal, using the Green Deal to take a very strong carbon neutral journey. By 2050, Europe aims to be carbon neutral. China is 2060, Japan is also 2050. So these are many different countries and regions are taking very strong carbon approaches, carbon neutral approaches. And for Europe, 50% of those carbon ambitions will be achieved through a circular economy. So really just show you how circular economy really is key. So the European Commission has released its second Circular Economy Action Plan. And these contain many small steps and big steps. So small steps such as addressing single-use plastics, standardizing charging cables, for instance, but also big steps in terms of it's opened at the moment. There's actually a roadmap, a public consultation roadmap at the moment for sustainable product initiatives, which we'll see. So for years, the European Commission has only been focused on energy using products or energy related products. So it's only really been addressing energy efficiency. So there's now a stronger case for moving away from energy efficiency into durability, into design for reusability, into a right to repair, and into toxic free materials. So over the next 10 years, the European Commission wants to double its circularity. It's currently at 12.5 and it wants to double that over the next 10 years. And for certain sectors, that's going to be quite disruptive. So it's moving away as well, heavily away from a very waste focus. So instead of having waste targets or recycling targets, it's moving, as I said, to a right to repair or having reuse targets. So how these rules are going to transition or come about is still to be defined. So in terms of repairability, will companies, I think they'll start initially with consumer electronics, and maybe consumer electronics will have to sell spare parts. You'll have to be able to actually open up your product and replace certain components. So you'll also then have to companies will also have to then supply actually instructions on how to do these repairs. So we also then, like many of us have actually grown up in a society or in a culture where repair was normal. So we're seeing those cultural norms come back. So then in terms of like individual countries, so the European Commission just sets a minimum standard of where we should be at. So in terms of I've just highlighted some initial different approaches that different countries are taking. So for instance, France has just in the last few days just announced they're going to make repair labels mandatory on point of sale. So you can see at some point how easy your product is to repair. How that will look like, it's still to be defined, but whether they'll tell you what parts can be repaired, how long it can be repaired, does it need an expert to repair it, or can you repair it at home? Do you need special parts to do that? In response to COVID, many countries are actually providing repair grants. France has provided repair grants for bicycle repairing, but Austria has also provided, so they've provided 1.6 million in Vienna alone for repair grants for electronic products. So through those grants, people in Vienna can get 50% of their repair costs paid for from the government. So other approaches have been taken in Sweden. They've reduced VAT on repairs to encourage repairs. And in Ireland, we're bringing in a latte levy. So we're actually going to put a tax on takeaway cups. Now that's an approach I would rather see them promote and help businesses that provide reusable cups or refills into reusable cups rather than a tax approach. But that's just one approach. We'll see how what effect that has, because we know that taxes on plastic bags have massive effect in Wales and in Ireland. So hopefully that will have the same effect here in Ireland. And then two other approaches I would like to highlight here as well is that so they are kind of on a consumer level that affects us. So on a more strategic level, I'll just highlight the difference between the Netherlands and Germany, which have taken quite different approaches. So in Germany's a very big manufacturer, so they've taken a much more resource view of a circular economy. So they've looked at what resources they need to be able to produce their products and how can they make sure they always have access to those resources. And on the other end of that, or another side of that could work in tangent with it, is the Netherlands. It's not a big producer, but they're a very innovative and a very entrepreneurial country. So they've taken a much more entrepreneurial and innovation approach. So they heavily support innovation startups, circular startups. So their ambitions is to be the circular lead by 2050. And so they're promoting a lot more in the business model, which we've seen a lot of other countries have focused more on the waste and moving from waste towards trying to work upwards towards the circular economy, where the Netherlands and Germany is taking a resource level and taking a circular business model level and moving downwards in that approach. So I suppose on that, what we want is how can we facilitate people and businesses to bring as much value into the resources that are existing. So instead of just looking at the waste at the end of life, it's how can you get as much value out of that product as it exists before it becomes discarded. So we work with a lot of companies and helping them combine their circular business model potential, combine that with a sustainable product design approach and methods, taking that and assigning the best mix of those to suit their responsible value chain for that company. So that varies for each company. That will vary what approach that take, and for every company as well, it needs to match their ethical branding. So we all know here we are in COVID times. We know the future is extremely uncertain. The future has always been uncertain. And like many before me, I've learned that the best way to predict the future is to design and create the future yourself, to create it the way you want it. So we can no longer ignore the risks associated with climate change, with biodiversity extinction, and resource scarcity or access to resources. So However, I would argue that the greatest risk is being left behind. And it's crystal clear now that we need to rethink and reimagine our future. So leaving on that note, we'd like to ask, is a circular economy the best way, or Circular Economy Act the best solution for Wales at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jude. That was absolutely fantastic. And I think everyone can see why I was so keen to have Jude speaking tonight, because there is just like that wealth of knowledge, and also the design aspect of it, and also just the global aspect of it. So it's interesting because I think if you have a look at the chat, Jude, there's some questions, Alison, I can see that you asked about some other countries. And so obviously Jude answered some of that and showed us what other countries are doing, which I think is really helpful. I was just going to go first then, David, there's been quite a few questions for you in the chat box. So I don't know if you wanted to come in and kind of answer. I think it's Alison and Gabriella in particular have asked about some more specifics around recycling and what you did with the consultation. And do you think like this strategy will suffice essentially?
Yeah. So, there were quite a lot of questions there for me, and I made notes, tried to keep up as we go through. So I'll try and answer them as best as I can. But I do want to say I learned a lot from that presentation, and you know, I think it's really interesting. The key thing, the key supporting thing for me is that this is about going beyond recycling, as our consultation document set out. That doesn't mean that we ditch what the journey that we've been on recycling. I think what our strength in Wales is the foundation that we've built on recycling gives us a really big opportunity to go to the next step. So when we start to think about repair, reuse, reprocessing, remanufacturing, those kind of things, it's because we've got that foundation in recycling. I think it puts us kind of ahead of the game there. So I do think it's really important. But we've been very clear to say that the document that we're working on isn't going to be a waste strategy. The previous documents were waste strategies. This is not going to be a waste strategy. And overall, people have been incredibly supportive of that. Not everyone has, and there are mixed views. And people are rightly, I guess, concerned that, are we going to lose the focus? Are we going to lose the momentum that we've had on recycling? Our intention is that we don't do that, but there is an urgent need because of the climate emergency, because of the economic impacts, because of the pandemic, that we actually have a much more broader focus than simply waste and recycling. In terms of the consultation, one thing I don't really talk about too much publicly is that in addition to doing the external consultation, we also did an internal consultation within the Welsh Government, where we identified around about 30 different parts of the Welsh Government who we thought could make a critical contribution to progressing the circular economy. And so if you think about that, the areas we were working with, including areas like housing, all the way from, for example, when we were working with housing, all the way from thinking about how do we design houses so that they incorporate space to enable separation of recycling items, all the way up to how are we designing housing to support active travel, biodiversity, mental health, those kind of things, be climate resilient going forward. So we're working with a lot of different parts of the Welsh Government to do that. There was a question about whether the circular economy is a challenge or an opportunity. We think definitely an opportunity, and we did some work with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation a while ago, which showed the benefits to the Welsh economy of that. And we've got amazing businesses innovating in Wales. River Simple with their hydrogen car, which is incredibly exciting, but far more exciting than that is their circular business model, where you buy into the car, you buy the service that is the car, that includes your insurance, includes your fuel, includes everything, where the real incentive is on the people making that car is to keep that car going. The other thing I just wanted to say is I do think that the pandemic has, rather than put the circular economy to the background, which was a risk, has almost risen it further up the agenda. And I think linking the circular economy into wider green recovery work around biodiversity, decarbonisation, etc., is really important and has given this work an added impetus. There was lots on towns. I think we're really interested in circular towns, and we're going to be doing a webinar on that in December. So we're really interested in looking at that. There's a lot of concepts bouncing around, things like 20-minute neighbourhoods. Again, we're really interested in that. On green, there's a lot of talk about skills and that kind of thing. There's a lot of talk about green skills. We're absolutely make the point that we think that repair, reuse, reprocessing, remanufacturing should be considered amongst green skills, in addition to things like the more traditional kind of construction and engineering that people think of. And there's loads of other stuff going on. I want to tell you about the business recycling that we're going to do, requiring all businesses to separate their waste. We've got tremendous expertise in Wales. We've got our Cerrig group, which is the Circular Economy Research Innovation, which brings together academics from across Wales who are learning from the globe. And indeed, we've got people on this session like Avion who take time to learn about things that are going on beyond our borders and share that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David. You covered so much there. I do love the circular towns. And like you said, I do feel that matches up a lot with what the Future Generations Commissioner is talking about at the moment as well. So you are seeing that joined up agenda. Ella, I was going to ask you if you wanted to come in and ask Jude your questions.
Yes, thank you. I would very much. Thanks, Jude. That was really interesting. I learned a lot from that, and I've been stalking you for some time on Twitter, so it's nice to see you. Also, I used to work at the Advertising Standards Authority, so I'd be really interested to read your work on greenwashing, but I've left that behind me now. So I run I'm one of the co-founders of Benfig, which is Wales's Library of Things, which I'm sure the concept is something that is familiar to all of you. And our kind of ethos is to create places where people can donate things they own but don't need, borrow things they need but don't own, and get together to learn skills to empower them to use those things. And obviously we think there are lots of items that people just don't need to own. You know, everybody doesn't need a drill in their house or a pressure washer. There are so many things that we've kind of got used to having one each of, that we think, you know, just isn't necessary in terms of kind of, you know, making the most of the resources we've already got. We want to see, you know, a change to that, and a way where we can facilitate people borrowing those things as and when they need them, and kind of losing that burden of ownership and maintenance. So anyway, my question is that we haven't sort of come across this yet ourselves, but it's kind of on our risk register, so on our radar, I suppose, is that obviously we appreciate that local businesses in particular, you know, small and medium enterprises might feel kind of threatened or targeted by that as we try and scale up and move on to high streets ourselves, which is what we think is key to kind of success in the model of what we're doing, having that kind of high street presence. And obviously we're really wary of that because we're really supportive of strong, resilient communities. And the last thing we want to do is be seen as this kind of, you know, aggressive incomer that's going to do the local hardware store out of business. And the way I kind of see us mitigating that risk is really empowering people to learn those skills, to, you know, feel like they can do their DIY and their gardening with the tools that they otherwise might not have access to, and that they might then buy the kind of more consumable type items from the hardware store. But that's sort of my own personal kind of thinking around it. And I wondered, Jude, whether you had any thoughts on that in your experience or any research you can point me to.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's brilliant to see that Wales has a library thing. So in 2015, 2016, I actually done quite a lot of research and a lot of business development into a sharing shop. So very similar, very similar approach for a high street.
Is it in Frome?
No, well, Frome, yeah. So I went down to visit Frome. I went down and visited them. But actually was looking at a more kind of high-end commercial approach to it. So looking at, as you said, training, but also looking at trial by use. So looking at one example for brands would be a trial by use of their products, and then tying that in with local shops as well to facilitate, as you said, people trialing out products before they see if they actually, especially for hobby products, to see if they actually want to use them or will use them long term. So absolutely, sharing is a key part of the circular economy. And there are a lot of, so I know in the Netherlands, there's a online Purby, that's online sharing, peer-to-peer sharing, which I used around Amsterdam as well. But Amsterdam has a very high density, so it's easy to cycle around and collect products and bring them back to people. So in terms of, I suppose, on a local, like the local sharing of resources, that can be on multiple areas for companies as well. It could be sharing of skills, it could be sharing of machinery and tools, and of resources as well. And so we've worked, so on that, we've worked, so our co-director Frank has worked a lot with Welsh company Orange Box, which through localizing their supply chain, not only did they create resilience, which I'm sure they're actually quite thankful at the moment, because we know a lot of companies during COVID had a lot of supply disruptions. So that localizing the supply chain and those localizing of resources is actually key to a resilient economy in the future as well. So absolutely, it's great to see that Wales has now got a model that is expanding, as far as I understand as well.
Oh yeah, we've got plans.
Brilliant.
The other question I had, thank you very much, by the way. The other question is whether you know of any research on kind of behavioural change, because, you know, what we're sort of anticipating is that if we manage to scale up in the first few years, this has been our experience so far on a small scale, people just want to donate to us. People clear out their sheds and they go, oh, great, I can get rid of this thing. And what we might expect to see is that after the first few years that would kind of dry up a little bit, and you'd get people more used to borrowing and having fewer donations because there are fewer people with extra stuff to spare. But I just wondered whether that kind of hypothesis has been tested anywhere, whether there's anything I can read about it.
I suppose it'd be interesting to see what's happened, as you say, in Canada and the US as well. There's been, like, Seattle and a lot of other places in the US have had tool libraries and kitchen libraries for a long time. So it's, I suppose at some point your business model might have to look at changing to actually purchasing very durable products as well. That when you lease out or when people share their products, that they actually know that they're going to last a long time as well. So that would be interesting to see which products, that feedback kind of on the products, which ones do last a long time. If you then combine that with a repair cafe, which ones actually are repairable as well. And in terms of
that's exactly what we're planning. I love it. I'm going to email you separately, Jude.
Great.
Oh, thank you, Anna. I love all your questions. Thank you so much. Before we move on, I was just going to ask you quickly, David, because we've had it from a couple of people. Tara King, who's our Vice Chair of Sustainable Wales, and also Robert has just asked, is there an opportunity to legislate circular economy outcomes within the long-awaited Environmental Act Wales regulations? Do you know if that's a possibility?
Yeah, so my boss Andy's leading on that work, and I think, look, there is an opportunity to do that. I think there's been a few points around legislation. I think one of the things I would want to say is that clearly ministers and politicians will make decisions about legislation, but where there has been circular economy measures in the past, so for example, the circular economy bill that was worked up in Scotland, the circular economy package from Europe, both of those have tended to focus on recycling measures rather than actual circular economy initiatives. So I suppose that would be one of my key points. When thinking about legislation, is the legislation itself going to drive circular economy, or is it about pushing the recycling agenda forward? I think those things have been blurred in the past. Some of the measures that we are trying to do, we're absolutely upfront about. So we're trying to use these vehicles to do things like take through the business recycling, where businesses in Wales will be required to separate their recycling. But that for me wouldn't really be considered necessarily a circular economy, a measure for circular economy legislation. That would be something else. So I guess that would be my word there. But there is huge opportunities in Wales through not just through the Environment Wales regulations, but through the work that we're doing with the UK government on the Environment Bill, etc. So there's lots going on. There's lots of opportunities. But I think just that point around being clear about, are we taking measures which are about taking the recycling agenda forward, or is it the circular economy?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on now, everyone. I hope that's okay. If there's any more questions, I can see that, David, thank you. I can see you going through the chat box and kind of answering some as we go along, which is great. But I'm going to bring in our next two speakers now, and then we'll try and bring some more questions in at the end. So there you go, Avion, I've made you the host now, so you should be able to share your screen. I think what's really nice tonight is that we're definitely expanding on, and, you know, as Welsh Government has said, it is beyond recycling. And I'm really pleased that Avion is here tonight, because there is also the other aspect of this, of the circular wealth, and that making Wales more resilient. So Avion Williams is the founder and CEO of Circular Economy Wales, a social enterprise that campaigns to see the elimination of all waste in Wales and its conversion into wealth, and locking it within the same local communities that collects the material. He is committed to the social economy model and has 20 years experience working within the sector in Wales, a former business advisor with the Wales Cooperative Centre, helping social enterprises to set up and grow. Before this, Avion worked for the Environmental Wales programme, specialising in deriving income from recycling and reuse. He has helped develop Europe's first zero waste village, which which achieved Wales's highest landfill diversion rate of 87% within 1 month, which in turn encouraged the Welsh Government to adopt its Towards Zero Waste strategy. And he's also been awarded a Churchill Fellowship in 2018, which took him to 6 European complementary currency systems across Europe, resulting in circular wealth Wales. So yes, I can't wait to hear this. Avian, over to you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sarah, and to Margaret and to Tara as well for the invite. It's great to see so many old familiar faces, and it's also a nice opportunity to hopefully make some new friends. Okay, a quick who, what, and why of Circular Economy Wales. I don't blame you if you haven't heard of us, so let's go for that. So who, we are a community interest company bringing global innovation to Wales. So it's great that we've had public sector solutions tonight from David. We've had also private sector, very innovative private sector solutions. So what I'm bringing to the table here is solutions for communities utilizing circular models to strengthen and rebuild our communities. So a quick what, we use practical plans to help, we provide practical plans to help rebuild Wales's communities. And we do that with systems that circulate resources and wealth. Now, specifically, we do this by what we call triple impact circularity, because of course you could have a circular economy that is very efficient of resources within industry. If we reach 100%, let's say, circularity of resources within industry, and shareholder dividend is moving out of Wales and out of communities, and the resources, the wealth resources within communities and the resilience of local small businesses begin to suffer, I think we might look back and think that we missed a trick. So the opportunity is to look at circularity in a holistic way. It's really about putting well-being, resilience from the Future Generations Act into the circular economy agenda. So the shape of Circular Economy Wales at the moment, we host a global collaborative of a specific subset of circular innovators. As I alluded to, people who look at the triple impact of models of the economic, social and environmental, all in equal measure. And we have a network now of 50 supporter members throughout Wales. So we're building on that too. Why are we doing this and why we came into being? Well, we have circular system. We are circular system designers of about 20 years. And we organised, little known fact, perhaps if it comes up in a pub quiz, you'll be able to answer this one. The declaration on, the International Declaration on Zero Waste was announced on Anglesey with the backdrop of Snowdonia in Beaumaris. So we were there organising that first conference and co-wrote that international declaration. Now, of course, zero waste is everywhere. We held at the time, our sector, the community sector, held the prime conferences, pushing every year for zero waste and pushing it up the agenda until that was legislated for. I was involved personally in establishing Wales's, and I think the UK's first zero waste villages, St Albans, Portstewart. We had Pristine in mid Wales, and there were a couple in the Conwy Valley as well. As Sarah alluded to, you know, these zero waste villages went from from a base of 30–40% to over 80 and early 90% recycling, and this was 10 years ago. So when we talk of reaching zero waste by 2050, you know, we very much feel in the community sector, who were the initiators of the first recycling trucks with the cages, the Newport Waste Savers design, the building design, that came from the community recycling network at the time as well. Arguably the most successful model in Western Europe, and it's that took us from being the dirty man of Europe up to third best globally. We also developed many of the initial reuse models that were income generators for social enterprises in our communities, utilizing resource, such as the first repaint schemes. I was involved with establishing Fair Share in Wales, and things like plastic models, all sorts of things. So you'll have been introduced this week, no doubt, to the Kate Raworth model, donut economics, that we're a fan of, where you've got the outer ring of this donut is the ecological ceiling that we shouldn't go beyond. We can't go beyond. And then the inner social foundation below which we fall, and we see energy shortages, social deprivation, health inequality, those kind of things. And Kate Raworth's model is that we stay within this the sweet band of the donut. Well, we don't see things too differently to that. In fact, as a nod to that, we're looking for the community interactions and links in that soft sweet ring. And if you're looping and catching resources that are floating around and capturing them in communities and bringing them down to that social foundation to increase social well-being, it starts to look a little bit like the spider graph that many of us had in our childhood. Perhaps I'm giving my age away there. So that's the kind of model. It doesn't conflict with the Raworth model. It sort of adds to it, just gives a bit of detail. So we've got these. So if we were to pull out one of these loops, I think if there was going to be a Circular Economy Act, we have to look at in true beyond recycling rhetoric, we have to look at capturing other resources like energy and wealth as well, and move beyond resources, look at it holistically. Now, the number, the variety of materials floating around that could be utilized to create resilient communities, and better places for us to live, greater interaction, as David was alluding to. I think it was Canton, where you've got lots, and we all saw it, didn't we, during this lockdown, a lot of community interaction. These are the kind of things that we want to build in, but we want to properly thought out. So why do we need to do this? Well, it fits into the wellbeing agenda, and as well, this could be a uniquely Welsh model. We are a community of communities in Wales, and we need to bring resource and community infrastructure back to people. And if we're going to be the global standard bearer for the circular economy, as Jane Davidson, Sophie Howes alluded to, what would be better than to come up with a uniquely community-based model? This doesn't, by the way, conflict with any of the work happening in other sectors. It just brings an additional sphere of activity to the table. And I think that's important to say. So we're looking for friends, looking for collaborators to do this. But let's have a look at some specific examples that we've been introducing. Precious Plastics is a model from the Netherlands, and this is micro reprocessing. On the large scale, this wouldn't be of interest to big companies. This is something that would go into a community where people would take waste plastics from rivers, from streets, from their houses, and turn it into products. Children could go in and turn waste plastics into mobile phone covers, and if they break and snap, they could take them back in, turn them into something else, that kind of thing. So we are the agency in Wales for the development of precious plastics. We're looking for funding to fund some of these units, and we think that they will give a resource, a facility to communities. So that's the kind of the ethos of everything we do. Let's have a look at another one. Wealth. So a big one, isn't it? Sort of looping the wealth in communities. So we've looked at, as Sarah said, I've been looking at doing this through complementary currency. So we've been supported by the Welsh Government to launch the Celyn, which is a mutual credit system. It was cited by a Belgian economist, the mutual credit system, as the secret behind Swiss economic stability. Many peer-reviewed essays about this, but the proof is in the pudding. It's been replicated 10 times in Italy, and it's a huge success. And we very much think if it gets further support when we roll it out on December the 11th, that it should be equally a success here in Wales.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, just go a minute left, if that's okay.
Okay. Community fridge as well. Equally, we're looking for funding for that. Our plan also includes development officer support, north and south. We've got 10 groups subscribing to that, wanting to host it, and we've got 10 decision makers all signed up to it as well. And then finally, who did the recycling? I think a few of us have already said this. You know, was it us, Circular Economy Wales? No, it wasn't. Was it the decision makers? No, it was the people of Wales. Although all of us here tonight have put in their lion's share of effort, but we all recognise, don't we, that it's the people of Wales who've done the recycling. So that's our offer, is to provide services and resources that people can use as a thank you for the huge effort that the people of Wales have made over the last few years in taking us to third in the world. So I'd love to work with more of you on these projects. Do get in touch. I've left my email and phone number down below. I think that's within 10 minutes.
That is absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. That was brilliant. And I hope that gave everyone, I mean, again, Aidan, you've been working in this for, decades, and you've done so much. And I'm so excited about your launch on the 11th of November. And I'd encourage everybody to get involved in that, because again, it is something that we can lead on in Wales, and and I love what you said about, we should be the ones that are kind of like the global standard bearer as well. So thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Margaret next. And Margaret is our last speaker of the last webinar. And so I do feel like, we've saved Margaret, who is our founder and director of Sustainable Wales, until the end. So getting some praise there, Margaret, I can see from Robert. So yes, Margaret is our co-founder and director of Sustainable Wales. And she is very much as well my personal mentor when it comes to all of these issues: climate change, sustainable development. And when I came to her with the idea of doing these webinars, she very quickly brought around her a group of friends and colleagues to help us to do this, which I really appreciate. Just a little bit on Margaret is that in 1984, she jointly founded and developed Friends of the Earth Cymru, and she stayed there until 1994 as chief spokesperson, directing campaign and information strategies, developing the local group network, lobbying, creating media stunts and demonstrations. Margaret was also a founder and co-director of Sustainable Wales, the cooperative operating the innovative Gentle Touch nappy laundry service between 2004 and 2010. In 2006, she co-founded Sust Wales, which is our community cooperative in Porthcawl. And at the Cynnal Cymru annual award ceremony held in Cardiff in 2016, Margaret became only the second ever recipient of the Special Recognition Award, recognising her 30 years plus years innovative work in environmentalism and sustainability. So she is our absolute eco warrior. Over to you, Margaret.
Thank you very much, and thanks to everyone else. I've learned such a lot tonight. And what I'm going to say is it's come from just my background experience, just this feeling of where we're at and what it's like in the community, down in the street, with the kind of work we do. So do we need a Circular Economy Act for Wales? I haven't got any slides, by the way. Maybe we do, but a circular economy sounds like common sense to us, but I don't want to wait to die for the state to implement it. You know, we're still waiting really in Wales for the implementation locally of the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act. I've lost it already. You know, really it's because it's supposed to be delivered by the public service boards located in the local authority areas, PSBs, and they're the agents supposed to do this. But where are they? Are they aware of, are we aware, are you aware of their work? To me, they're invisible. And so in a way, I think I'm presenting the perspective that we can hear fantastic policies. We know there are fantastic projects around, but what happens down in the street? Those service boards, just in case you don't know, there's 13 members representing local authority, health, fire, rescue, natural resources Wales, and one for the voluntary sector. They are required to think more long-term, to collaborate, to be more participatory, look to prevent problems and take a more joined-up approach, develop targets and report annually. So they're the junction box, if you like. They're the junction box from policies to us, but they're invisible. David Thorpe, who teaches at University of Wales, Trinity, founder of One Planet Wales, suggests that we should maybe randomly select citizens' assemblies who could liaise with them and maybe even, I would say, scrutinise these boards, or indeed, how about involving representatives from community groups who have acted so spontaneously during this pandemic? They are the people who participate in civic life, who are engaged. My experience over 40 years of environmentalism, campaigning, awareness raising, establishing practical projects as achieve individual commitment, passion, and a good deal of promotion, but it's about those individuals. And of course, a lot of the time, there's an inordinate amount of time that goes on trying to get grants, money to keep things going, to keep the show on the road. So these people who are so motivated have loads of energy having to be put into trying to get the money to maintain what they're doing. And that seems such a waste really as well. The brilliant community projects we've had illustrated on this webinar series, Zero Plastics, Reuse, Refill, Refashion, etc., are models and pilots and should be encouraged and supported, evaluated for replication, adaptation, or development. Thus, they can be recognised for what they are: innovative, forward-thinking, creative, and special. Where are the agencies to help? Shouldn't we be seeing much more effort by local authorities to nurture these pioneers? As a former home economics teacher, I've been amazed and disappointed that the schools and the curriculum have not provided the required emphasis. It's taken David Attenborough, Greta Thunberg, and the school strikes to mobilise opinion. Though fortunately, the introduction of the Donaldson report, Successful Futures, seeks to give learners at all stages of education understanding, so that's good, of the impact of their choices on other people, on the economy and the environment. And they, you know, and have to become ethically informed citizens. How about educating for entrepreneurship? Understanding what a social enterprise is, what a community cooperative, why do we have this type of body, what is it, and what do we mean by green jobs? Anyway, I feel it's the right time to reboot the system, build local capacity, promote the circular and revive the local economy, creating a more resilient society. Really, globalization has devalued community living. Yet local cooperation leads to community resilience and is a powerful way to cope with crisis situations as we are seeing. The pandemic has been devastating, but it could and it should be able to bring opportunity now to build a better economy. Policymakers, local government officers, politicians are going to have to step up, become more proactive, step outside, searching out those passionate people, their projects, those businesses, and work with them to propel this agenda. Time is running out. Their aims will be to design systems that reduce, reuse resources and which also lock wealth, like Avian said, into local communities before it disappears into the ether of the global economy and indeed the bank accounts of distant shareholders. Systems that prioritize local production for local consumption and minimize production based on long-term distance transport. That's what we're looking for. Systems that support rooted social enterprises, workers' co-ops and community business where wealth is shared. And leadership sets an example, greening the Welsh Parliament and local government public procurement policies, bringing ecological and social values into the tendering process can accelerate this new economy by then purchasing resource efficient, carbon neutral goods and services, helping develop the evolving foundational economy, which is classed as the goods and services that are essential for everyday life, for households, and as such, jobs which depend on social consumption and less on individual consumption. Long overdue is taxation, which needs to progressively shift from labour to resource use, new resource use, countering pollution, climate change and waste, and promoting efficient, eco-friendly production methods. To me, these are features of localism, a more decentralized area of influence, surely more likely to influence behavior. And people like us understand that the time is running out. The climate and biological emergencies spell a clear and present danger to our children and grandchildren. So can we bring about a regenerative circular economy that minimizes human pressure on nature, avoiding waste, stimulating innovation, and opening new job opportunities? Also encouraging bottom-up transformation with decentralized politics, participatory democracy, putting quality of life first, thinking globally whilst acting locally. Maybe a circular economy act for Wales could just do that. It could create more focus as part of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. Thanks very much.
Oh, Margaret, that was absolutely wonderful, as always. Thank you so much. And I hope everyone agrees as well. Just a lovely way to round off the series. I've had a look through. I'm so sorry. The chat box is just moving so quickly. And I just see there's wonderful discussion, as always. Lots of people sharing resources, sharing like TED Talks, answering questions. Thank you so much to all the speakers who have offered to kind of like follow up with people afterwards. People saying here, Margaret, thank you for bringing it back to the community level, which if anybody knows Margaret, that is what she is all about. That is the ethos of Sustainable Wales as well. Yeah, I'm just having a look through. It's just lots of thanks and thanks. I mean, it's actually come to the end now. If anybody wants to just let me know, if you use the reaction button or raise your hand if you wanted to ask any questions. But if not, I was going to wrap up now. We've come to the end, but I obviously always want to give everybody an opportunity to do that. Yes, Pam, there's our YouTube channel, which you can have a look on to see all the previous ones. So I think that's everything. Okay, wonderful. I hope it's okay. I haven't really done this before in any of the other sessions, but as we come into the end of them now, I thought I'd just give my own kind of roundup of this and perspective. Like I said, we've had like some absolutely wonderful speakers, and it's been incredibly difficult. I've asked them to speak for 10 minutes when I think all of us know you could speak about this for hours and hours and hours is such a huge topic. I think what I've personally learned is that you know, it's only part of it's not a panacea, the circular economy, you know. There's so many different moving parts to it. There's so it is only part of the sustainable development goals. I really think, and I think that this is what Jude has especially shown tonight, and Avian actually, you know, it's the international perspective, the global perspective is so vital to this. There's so many good things in other countries that are happening that we can learn from, which is really powerful. I'd also, you know, I just think that the main thing that we can do now, and I know that David, you touched on this as well, is that, you know, it is about the politicians and it is about who is in government who ultimately gets to decide what is prioritised. I'm thrilled that the circular economy strategy is going to be coming out at the end of this year. But what I would say is that if we don't have a circular economy act, and it's true, I posed this question never thinking that, you know, that was what we needed, but I am also concerned, and I think all of us here tonight have got a passion about tackling meaningfully tackling climate change, and we obviously keep hearing, you know, we've got 12 years to go, we've got 10 years to go, and it doesn't really feel like anything is really happening. And my fear is that with the best will in the world from all of us here tonight, that we set the target of 2050 and then the goalposts keep moving and moving and moving. But I do understand that there are other ways of putting those, you know, those measurements in there and making sure that we stay on that. And it will be interesting to see if we can put any of this and these kinds of checks and balances, I guess, in any other legislation. But the biggest thing from this is that, and this is what comes back to the community level, we, the public, have to keep pushing for this. It does make businesses change the way that they're doing things. And we have to make sure that our politicians and whoever is in government, that they do keep this on the agenda. And that's going to be the biggest thing that I think that we can do now. And of course, as we imminent, you know, we wait the imminent circular economy strategy, no pressure, David and David. So I just wanted to end, I hope that's okay. And I just wanted to end and say thank you to everybody who has come tonight. Thank you to everybody who's come to more than one of these and all of them. It's just been such a buzz to see you all join every week. We were hoping to maybe do something again in future. You know, this really was kind of a very quick snapshot of the circular economy. And like I said, I hope that everybody's inspired to go off and learn more, essentially. So thank you to Margaret, thank you to Avian, thank you to David, and thank you to Jude very, very much. I think Brian has gone, but thank you to Brian, thank you to Frank as well. You know, there were many people who had many discussions with me, hour-long discussions with me, you know, before we put these together. So yes, thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who has come along. And that's it. That's the end of the webinar series. So good evening. Thank you.